Ever thought of this before? You're at a casual get-together, nothing fancy, music's low, people are laughing, drinks in hand. You catch her looking at you from across the room, not staring, just long enough to register. Your eyes meet, and then she looks away. She suddenly starts talking more animatedly to her friend, laughs louder, turns her body slightly away from you, and right there, something tightens in your chest. Okay, you think, she's not interested. So you do what most men do in that moment. You pull back, you stop engaging. You tell yourself not to overthink it. You assume the signal was rejection. But let me tell you something, calmly and honestly, because I've seen this play out more times than I can count. There's a very real chance you just missed one of the clearest signs she actually was interested. And I know how frustrating that is, that confusion, that constant mental replay. Was she into me? Or was I imagining it? It's exhausting, isn't it? It makes you second-guess yourself. It makes you hold back, not because you lack confidence, but because you don't want to look foolish or get hurt. And slowly, without realizing it, you start playing defense instead of leading your own dating life. I get it, truly. But here's the shift I want you to make today. We're not going to talk about what women say. We're not going to analyze texts or emojis or what she meant by that message. Today, we're decoding behavior. Because behavior doesn't lie, it just whispers. And most men miss the whisper because they're listening for a shout. Here's the truth. Women rarely explain directly. Women often pull back when they feel something, not when they feel nothing. Interest doesn't always look like pursuit. Sometimes it looks like hesitation. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like her leaving before she wants to. Especially after a side date. Especially when emotions are involved. Especially when she's trying to stay in control of herself. And that's exactly why women often come back to the man who didn't chase, pressure, or emotionally grab onto the moment. So today, I'm going to show you why women come back after the last side date and what they're responding to in your behavior, whether you realize it or not. We're going to uncover why calm exits stay in her mind longer than dramatic gestures, the quiet test she runs after the date without telling you, the common mistake men make that kills attraction without warning, the subtle signals that mean she's reopening the door, and how to respond in a way that makes her feel safe, curious, and drawn back without chasing. By the end of this, you won't feel confused anymore. You'll feel steady, clear, and confident in how you move. Because once you understand what women respond to behaviorally, you stop guessing and you start leading. Let's begin with the first clue. The one that explains why the man who walks away calmly is often the one she can't stop thinking about. Let me paint a picture. You go on what you'd call a side date. Nothing dramatic, no big declarations. You talk, laugh, maybe there's chemistry, maybe it's light. When the night ends, you don't linger awkwardly. You don't push for, when can I see you again? You smile, wish her a good night, and you leave. And the next day, nothing. No long follow-up text, no "did I do something wrong?" message, no emotional dump. Here's the part most men don't expect. That's often the moment she starts thinking about you. Now, I know what you're feeling. Wait, if I don't show more interest, won't she assume I don't care? I get why that fear shows up. I've seen this dynamic play out hundreds of times. And here's the truth women rarely say out loud. How a man leaves matters more than how he arrives. This is what I call the calm exit effect. When you exit a date calmly, without urgency, pressure, or emotional grabbing, you create space. And in that space, her mind does something very specific. It replays the experience and fills in the emotional gaps on its own. Not because you're being distant, not because you're playing games, but because you showed something rare, emotional self-containment. Here's the behavioral insight most men miss. Women don't come back because a man impressed them. They come back because they felt good around him and didn't feel managed, rushed, or claimed. When you leave without needing reassurance, you communicate, "I enjoyed this, but I'm okay either way. I trust my value without selling it. I don't need to chase a moment, I let it breathe." That calm confidence lingers. So, what should you do instead of chasing the follow-up? Here's the mindset shift. Your job is not to lock her in. Your job is to leave the door emotionally clean. Practically, that means end the date on a high note. Keep your goodbye simple and warm. Let her nervous system settle before you re-enter the picture. If she comes back, it's because she wants to, not because she felt obligated. And here's the most important part. Women return to men who don't collapse emotionally in the pause. So ask yourself this before the next message you're about to send. Are you responding from calm confidence or from the need to be chosen? Because that difference, that's exactly what determines whether she comes back or quietly moves on. Now let me ask you something that leads us straight into section 2. What do you think she's actually measuring in the silence after a date? And why does that quiet moment matter more than the date itself? 2. The emotional aftertaste test. After a date ends, something subtle happens on her side that most men never see. There's no announcement, no text explaining it, no obvious signal. But internally, she's running what I call the emotional aftertaste test. This isn't about how funny you were, how attractive you are, or even how much chemistry there was in the moment. Those things matter, but they're not what determines whether she comes back. What she's really asking herself is much simpler. How do I feel after being around him? Not during, after. Does she feel calm or slightly tense? Does she feel grounded or emotionally stirred up in a way she can't quite explain? Does she feel like herself or like she had to perform? Here's where men often misunderstand silence. When a woman goes quiet after a side date, it doesn't automatically mean she lost interest. Very often, it means she's processing. She's letting the emotional residue settle. And the mistake many men make right here? They interrupt that process. They send check-ins that sound harmless but land heavy. Did you get home okay? Hope I didn't say something weird. I had a great time, just wanted to make sure you did too. I know the intention is good, it's human, it's honest. But behaviorally, here's how it often lands on her nervous system: pressure. Not aggressive pressure, emotional pressure. Instead of letting the positive aftertaste deepen, she's now managing reassurance, responding, regulating your feelings along with her own. And attraction doesn't grow in management. It grows in space paired with emotional safety. So what's the grounded response here? Let the aftertaste speak for you. If the date felt good, trust that. If the interaction was warm and relaxed, trust that too. A calm pause after a date communicates, I'm secure. I don't need immediate validation. I trust the connection to breathe, and that's incredibly attractive, especially to a woman deciding whether she wants to step closer or step back. This doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean ignoring her. It means not rushing to fill silence out of anxiety. When you do reach out, you're not checking in, you're inviting. Short, grounded, no emotional hooks. Something like, hope your week's going well. That's it. No pressure, no evaluation, no emotional tug. And here's the key insight most men miss. If she comes back, it's because the emotional aftertaste was good, and you didn't contaminate it with urgency. Now let me gently challenge you as we move into the next section. What if the very things you've been told to do to show interest are actually the behaviors that push her away, without you realizing it? That's what we need to talk about next. 3. The mistake that pushes her away, without you realizing it. Let's slow this down for a moment, because this is where a lot of good men quietly lose momentum without ever knowing why. I want you to hear this without defensiveness, because it's not an attack, it's clarity. Most men don't lose a woman because they did something wrong. They lose her because they tried to secure the outcome too early. It usually shows up in small, almost invisible ways. You start subtly steering conversations toward the future. You increase consistency before it's been earned. You try to lock in emotional certainty instead of letting attraction unfold. And from your perspective, it makes sense. You're thinking, I'm being clear. I'm showing intention. I don't want to play games. But here's how it often lands on her side. Behaviorally, not emotionally. It feels like the ending is being written before the middle has played out. And that creates pressure, not danger. Not fear, just enough emotional weight to make her instinctively step back. Women are highly sensitive to emotional acceleration. When things move faster emotionally than the connection can support, her nervous system responds by slowing things down, often by pulling away. This is the part men rarely hear explained. Attraction doesn't grow from certainty. It grows from voluntary choice. When you start acting as if she's already chosen you, before she's made that decision internally, you remove the space she needs to choose you freely. And the moment choice feels assumed, attraction softens. So what's the correction here? Shift from proving to positioning. You don't need to demonstrate how interested you are. You need to hold your pace. Practically, that looks like letting her match effort instead of exceeding it, responding warmly without escalating intensity, staying present without future casting. You're not withdrawing, you're regulating. And that regulation communicates something powerful. I enjoy you, and I trust this process. That's calming, that's attractive, that's masculine in a grounded, stable way. Here's the gentle wake-up call I want you to carry forward. The goal isn't to be chosen quickly. The goal is to be chosen willingly. When you give her time to feel into the connection, without emotional pressure, you become the man she feels safe coming back to. So before we move on, ask yourself this honestly. Are you trying to be clear, or are you trying to be certain? Because in the next section, we're going to talk about the life-relatable situations where women do come back, and the specific cues that tell you the door is opening again. That's where this really starts to click, is where a lot of men get confused, because on the surface, it looks contradictory. She comes back, but not loudly, not dramatically, not with a big confession. Instead, she reappears in ways that feel casual. Maybe she reacts to your story. Maybe she sends a simple, "This made me think of you." Maybe she asks a low-stakes question she didn't need to ask. And here's the key detail most men overlook. She's reconnecting without reclaiming. This usually happens in very normal, very human circumstances. She's had time away and emotionally settled. Other dates didn't feel the same. Life slowed down enough for her to notice what felt easy with you. What she's responding to isn't competition. It's familiarity paired with freedom. She remembers how she felt around you, calm, seen, unpressured. And because you didn't rush to define or possess the connection, she feels safe stepping back in on her own terms. This is the familiar but unclaimed signal. And here's how you recognize it behaviorally. She initiates small contact without emotional weight. She references shared moments casually, not nostalgically. She engages without asking, "Where is this going?" That's not uncertainty. That's curiosity reopening. Now, this is important. This is also where men often fumble. They respond with intensity to something that was intentionally light. They jump straight into long conversations, emotional validation, or subtle pressure to pick up where we left off. And when that happens, the door closes again. So here's the grounded response. Match the weight, not the frequency. If she sends something light, you respond light. Warm, present, unforced. You don't interrogate the reappearance. You don't ask why she came back. You don't try to define it. You let it breathe. A calm response says, "I see you. I'm open, and I'm not grabbing." That emotional steadiness is what allows her to stay instead of retreating again. Here's the mindset shift that changes everything. When a woman comes back quietly, she's testing safety, not attraction. Attraction already existed. Safety is what determines whether it grows. So before you reply to that message, ask yourself, am I responding in a way that keeps this light and inviting, or am I trying to secure it? Because in the next section, we'll talk about the clearest invitation she gives without words, and how to respond in a way that naturally moves things forward without pressure. That's the final piece. For the invitation she makes without words. When a woman is ready to come back for real, she usually doesn't announce it. She doesn't say, "I've decided I want to see you again." She doesn't ask for a restart. She creates opportunity. And this is where men who've done everything right up to now sometimes hesitate or overcorrect. Here's what the invitation often looks like in real life. She mentions availability without directly asking, "This week's been weirdly open." She references something you talked about before. That place you mentioned finally popped up again. She lingers in conversation instead of ending it. She asks questions that extend interaction, not just exchange information. These aren't accidents. They're low-risk openings. Behaviorally, she's saying, "I'm here. If you want to step forward, you can." What she's watching now isn't whether you're interested. It's how you lead without pressure. And this is the response that matters most. You acknowledge the opening and give direction, calmly, not a pitch, not a long explanation, not a flood of enthusiasm, something simple and grounded. We should continue that conversation in person. Let's grab a coffee this week. That's it. Clear, present, no emotional weight attached. This works because it does three things at once. It shows confidence without urgency. It respects her pace while offering structure. It moves things forward without demanding reassurance. Here's the subtle insight most men miss. Women don't come back to be convinced. They come back to see who you are when the door is open. If you hesitate too much, momentum fades. If you push too hard, safety disappears. The balance is calm leadership. And if she accepts, great. If she doesn't, you stay regulated and self-respecting. That alone keeps you attractive, regardless of outcome. So before we move into the conclusion, sit with this final question. When opportunity shows up quietly, do you meet it with steady direction or with hesitation disguised as politeness? Because how you answer that question is often the difference between a woman coming back briefly and choosing to stay. Here's the controversial truth, delivered calmly, not dramatically. Women don't come back because you waited perfectly. They come back because you didn't need the outcome. Read that again. When a woman returns after a side date, after silence, after distance, it's not because you executed a strategy, it's because your behavior told her something powerful. I'm steady. I'm grounded. I don't collapse when things pause. And that matters more than charm, more than intensity, more than constant communication. What you've learned here isn't how to get her back. It's how to be the man women feel safe choosing, without pressure. Calm exits, clean pauses, light reconnections, clear invitations. That's not detachment, that's emotional leadership. And here's my message to you directly. You don't need to chase clarity. You don't need to rush connection. You don't need to prove your value through effort. You already have more power here than you think when you stop trying to force certainty and start trusting your presence. If this resonated, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, have you noticed women coming back when you stopped pushing? Or where do you feel you usually lose your balance? I read your experiences and I respond. I'll leave you with this. Attraction doesn't grow where it's demanded. It grows where it's invited and allowed to stay.